Session 11. Communication.
Speak the truth in love.
Honey, get up now. Come on. Up and at 'em. Get all your things together here and put them in your case. So I want them in this case because Daddy's going to come to pick you up and we're not going to be ready. There he is. Hi, Larry. Come on in.
Sweetie. Oh, I missed you. You ready to go?
No, she's not.
Oh.
I'm sorry. We're running a little late. Go upstairs and get your bear. Oh, Larry, here it is.
Listen, Lil, I really appreciate this. I mean, I know this wasn't part of the divorce settlement, but well, I'm really glad you're giving it to me.
It's
Thanks.
no problem. I mean, I don't have any purpose for it. It's your yearbook. It was your big senior year.
Yeah. Well, I'll go get Ellie.
Larry, tell me how you've been.
Oh, it's, great. I mean, just great. Business is great. How about you?
I'm great.
Well, you look great. Oh, by the way, here's the child support. I'm sorry it's been late the last couple of months.
No, it's okay. I know you've been busy. It's okay. Oh, are we still on for you to take Allison that last weekend of the month?
What?
Remember I told you I had the banking seminar that I have to go to?
A banking seminar? No,
I told you about
anything.
this twice, Larry, and both times you said fine.
Lil, as far as I can remember,
Larry.
this is the first I've heard about. Look,
Larry.
Look, did you call Jeannie so that she could put it on the books?
I have to call your secretary just so you can schedule time for your daughter? Honestly, nothing has changed. This is so typical of you. You still never listen to a word I say. You are just so
Here we go again. Here we go
hard-headed.
again. Don't you ever let up? I mean, we're divorced for Pete's sake, and you're still harping about
This
that.
is why we got divorced, Larry, because you do not know how to communicate.
Oh, give me a break.
It's true, we never talked.
Oh, we talked plenty.
Oh, sure, we talked about what's on TV tonight, Lil. What you making for supper tonight, Lil. Did you plan anything for the weekend, Lil? I should have been your secretary, but I should not have been your wife.
You know, at least when I talked, it was about something. I mean, you could talk for hours and accomplish nothing.
Since when does talking have to accomplish something, Larry, huh? Can't you just talk to somebody so you can be with them? You know, share your life.
No, what's the point, huh? What's the point? I mean, you obviously don't get anywhere by talking. You got to look at the bottom line.
Let me tell you what the bottom line is, mister. This is the bottom line. You never said anything either.
What?
Anytime anything emotional came up, you would run and hide behind your work. I could never, ever reach you. I never knew how you felt about anything.
Yeah, that's because anytime anything emotional came up, you talked it to
Well,
death.
it's better than not talking at all.
I don't like talking about personal things.
I was your wife, Larry. Your wife. I needed to talk about personal things. You just don't understand.
You just don't
Communication. I remember the first time I traveled outside our country and was in a land that didn't speak English. And we were getting off the plane and went into the airport and went outside, and I was trying to talk to someone to help me a little bit, and I found out they didn't speak my language and I didn't speak theirs, but I began to talk to them and they began to talk to me, and we both tried to talk, and then we both started speaking slower. Would you please, I said in English, thinking to myself, I'll just say it slower. And that didn't work, and then I began to say it louder. Just please pick up. And then we both realized what we were doing at the same instant and realized that we couldn't communicate even if we spoke slower or spoke louder. Communication. Isn't it interesting that Jesus Christ is called the Word of God, the speech of God, and that the Bible says the heavens declare the glory of God, and that God was so committed to communicating that he even wrote a bestseller, the Bible, and that when we get to glory, we'll communicate with God for eternity. But while we're here on earth, there seems to be some real difficulty, isn't there, between communicating man to man, woman to woman, adult to child, child to adult. How many times as a youngster do you run to your bedroom saying, "You just don't understand me," meaning I told you everything, and how come you don't understand? Because if you did understand, then you would understand life the way I do, and you would agree, and you'd let me do what I was wanting to do. How many times in marriage do you find yourself trying to say what you feel and getting frustrated because you can't quite get it out? And then if it gets more and more emotional, you'll do one of two things. You'll clam up. Clam up. That all of a sudden your emotions clam up and your heart does, and you've given up trying to say it, and you want your spouse to somehow figure out what you were trying to say by your silence. That maybe they'll get it this time if you just were quiet. Or maybe when it gets difficult to communicate, you find yourself saying it louder, or leaning forward, or making gestures of power and authority, and whatever it may be. Communication. Those people who deal with counseling marriages say that it's always the breakdown of communication that's at the beginning point of everything that goes wrong. That somehow when the wife and the husband are there talking together, something doesn't get across. Because in both of our minds are the idea, if I could just tell you what I was thinking and you really understood it, you would think the way I think and everything would be fine. The only problem is the other person has the exact same thought and they're trying to communicate. And in a sense, we're like a sender of information and a receiver of information. Sometimes the problem is that we're both sending at the same time. We're both trying to communicate what we're thinking at the same time, and the words get stuck in the middle. Sometimes what we're trying to say comes out cluttered, and we know what we're trying to say, but it doesn't come across in a way that the other person really captures it. And finally, they repeat what we said, and we say, "I know that's what I said, but that's not what I meant." Sometimes the communication is clear, but the person who's receiving it has a hearing aid that filters out things because they're really ticked off. And you're saying something calmly because you're not upset, and it's real clear to you, and you say to yourself, "This is a real clear sentence here," and they blow up, or they run away, or they break into tears, and you're saying, "What did I say?" The answer is, if you played back the tape recorder, you may have said something fine. It wasn't in the sending, it was in the receiving of the information. Sometimes if there's hurt and unforgiveness and anger, we somehow can't do it. And this issue of communication, we can approach the subject one of two ways. We can approach it the way the world approaches it, and let me give you a list of 10 things to do and not to do. How-tos, we call them. Or we can back away and say, there's probably a root reason why communication doesn't work, and I think maybe God, who's the person who thought up communication in the first place, gives some answers in the Bible about how to communicate. And therefore, in this short little section on communication in marriage, we're going to dive right into the Bible and deal with some real nitty-gritty issues about how communication takes place. I love what one person, Martin Luther, said about this whole issue of communication. He said, "Think of all the squabbles Adam and Eve must have had in the course of their 900 years. Eve would say, 'You ate the apple,' and Adam would retort, 'You gave it to me.'" Little things can really bother us in communication. So many times it's the littlest of things Good friend Dennis Rainey said, conflict often starts with something small, even inconsequential. As someone said, people who claim that small things don't bother them never slept in a room with a mosquito. How many of us have tried to be talking to the other person like this wife was, and all that's there is that paper. I can hear you, go ahead.
I've given the best years of my life to the daily news.
At times like these, she probably feels like she's living with a total stranger.
Yes, I do.
Well, here, take a look at this news item. Listen to this headline. Husband says, sometimes I sit and listen. Sometimes I just sit. This whole issue of communication. Somehow the words come out of a mouth. And when you try to research the Bible about this subject of communication, you find yourself tripping over this word, the tongue. The tongue. And the Bible pictures the tongue in James very, very interestingly, doesn't it? In James 3 it says, behold, we put bits in the horses' mouths that they may obey us. James chapter 3 verse 4 said, look at ships. Although they are large and are driven by fierce winds, they are turned by a very small rudder. Very small rudder. I remember diving underneath around the back of a ship once, a great big one, filled this room up. I couldn't believe the size of the rudder. A little tiny rudder controlled that big ship. James chapter 3. Even so, the Bible says the tongue is a little member and boasts of great things.
Hey, I'm number one!
You know, if you were to dissect a person for a minute and put all our parts here, the tongue is little. And yet of all the things that can harm or help another person, can you name anything else that could do more damage or more good than a tongue? I don't know anything. My fist can't. Nothing I have. And James goes further and describes the power of a tongue. Say how great a forest, a little fire kindles. The tongue sets on fire the course of nature. How powerful is it? Listen to these words right out of the Bible. Proverbs 18:21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Death and life. Has anybody ever unleashed their serpent tongue at you and you died inside? How many of you have died inside because of the words of other people? And how many of you were dead inside and you bumped into somebody who had the power of the tongue on the positive side? Yes. And they spoke love to you. And in a few words, you walked with life in you. I stopped in Walt's office today. And I was having a bit of a challenging day, and he knew it. We're close friends. He can read me like a book. And he got out of his chair and was talking to me, and I was about ready to leave his office, and I went in to encourage him. And he stopped and said, let me pray for you. He prayed a sentence prayer, looked me right in the eye and said, Bruce, love you, man. It's going to be okay. I remember walking out the door, closing it. Yes. What? What was that? Life from a friend. Wow. Power of the tongue can destroy a marriage, or it can blossom a marriage. Can it not? Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18 says, there is one who speaks like the piercing of the sword, but the tongue of the wise permits healing. It'll either cut us and shred us. Some people I stay away from. I stay away from them because of why? The tongue. My goodness. What's the Bible say, therefore, because of the power of the tongue? Let's look at some key passages. Passage number 1 is in the book of James, chapter 1, verse 19 and 20, and verse number 26. Therefore, my beloved, let every man, here are 3 principles, be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Swift to hear. Let me listen. Say it again. Do I have it right? Swift to hear. And slow to speak. And slow to wrath. Why? The exact opposite is how it comes normal. I am so quick to speak, slow to listen. I don't get angry very often. I have my other problems. That's not particular one of them. But this issue of slow to speak and swift to hear. Boy, if we just listen quick. But instead, this person's talking to us, and we are already in the middle of the third word, preparing our answer. And as soon as that person breathes, we want to speak. Why? Because we believe it's smarter to be swift to speak. Which means then I got to have bigger ears than the mouth that I have. Quicker ears. They run to you. And I'm holding that tongue back like a horse that wants to run. Why do you think the last phrase is there? Swift to hear, I can get that one. Slow to speak, I can get that one. But of all the things you could add next, slow to wrath. When you see the other passages, you're going to realize that the number one reason why we have problems communicating is wrath, anger. Now, how big of a deal is it whether I control my tongue and whether you control your tongue? Verse 26 says, if anyone among you thinks he is religious, he's a good Christian, and does not hold on their tongue, bridle his tongue, but deceives his own heart, this one's religion is useless. Which the Bible's trying to say, if anything Christianity is supposed to help, it's you and your tongue. Hold it back, bridle it, control it. No, shut up. Don't say that. Don't. Only say that which is good. Wow. Boy, that puts a lot of thought on my mind about if anything I'm going to do as a Christian, it better be that I can hold back this beast that lives in my mouth. Do you have a beast? How many of you have a beast? How many of you have ever said something that after you said it, you'd have given everything in your wallet to pull back those words? Oh, my. Proverbs 15:1, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. You ever counsel somebody, a couple, and one person's mad? And depending upon the words out of the spouse, whether they're right or wrong, will have everything to do with this person. If all of a sudden the tone and the loudness, the volume goes down, and it's a gentle answer, you can watch the person who is furious. Oh, is that the way you feel about it? I've had people do that to me. It makes me almost stop. Oh, I guess I'm not as mad as I thought I was. So, when somebody else in my marriage comes along with wrath, I have one response. Passage number 2. Passage 1 is James chapter 1. Passage number 2 is a key one. Where do you see this? Ephesians chapter 4, verse 24, 25, 26, 27, and into verse number 32. Let's pick it up at verse 25. It says, therefore, now watch carefully. There's secrets in this verse. Putting away lying, each one speak truth with his neighbor, be angry and do not sin. Putting away lying, why? Because lying can only come out of your mouth. And in communication, if I don't tell the truth to you, we are going to have conflict, misunderstanding. Maybe not at the moment, but eventually it's going to unravel. Therefore, principle 1, don't lie when you speak to somebody else. If they think you're lying, find out why and try it again. Try it again. Try it again. Don't lie. Tell the truth. Second idea, speak the truth. Not part of the truth. Tell the truth. I used to break this all the time. I didn't really know it. I used to think, I'm not going to say the whole truth because it'll hurt their person's feelings. Or if somebody else had done something wrong and it hurt these people over here, I would never tell them what that person did toward them. I would jump in the middle and not tell them the truth to protect them. I realize that I'm sinning. They have to handle the problem that they have. I don't. Never hurt, but speak the truth. Speak the truth. Don't lie. Tell the truth. It's a hard lesson. Tell the truth. Get it out. The only way the truth is going to get out is if I say the truth. Don't lie. Tell the truth. Principle number 3 there is tied to anger again, surprisingly. Be angry and do not sin. Why is that there? Because that is the root. That is the root of all incorrect communication. It's anger. You may not know you're angry, but if you pull it back down and there's mixed up communication, it's tied in there. Be angry and don't sin. Can you be angry and not sin in communication? Yes. But there's another principle here that my mom told me when we were getting married. I didn't know was in the Bible. The next part of this verse. And don't let the sun go down on your wrath. Oh, I haven't always obeyed that one. I did for a lot of years, and then I forgot it. Got a little more stubborn, I guess I got older. Why? Why? Why not let you stew because you deserve it? You ever feel that way? Yeah. I'm not going to fix this. She's wrong this time. There's men in the back. Oh, watch out for the next time, man. How many of you have done the same thing and went to bed and you turn on your backs away from each other and nobody said a word all night long? How many? Come on. You know what we think in that moment? We'll say, I'll cool off and it'll be easier to deal with the next day. You know what? It's worse. You know why it's worse? Watch out now. You know why it's worse? The next verse tells you why. But look at that. Nor give place to the devil. Wait a minute. What are you telling me? I'm not telling you anything. I'm reading the verse. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. What's the point? If you, in marriage or in anything else, don't process through that, and I go to bed and sleep on it, somebody's busy during the night, and it's not me. And maybe a little more hardness in my heart the next morning than there was the night before. Hasn't every single marriage you ever known did that? And somewhere on the line, they broke. And they decided, I'm not going to talk about it. What's that mean? That means in communication, you got to tell the truth and you say, well, I'll do whatever I can and whatever it takes to get it right tonight. So helpful the Bible is. Next passage, goes on a little bit further. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, it says, this is so absolute, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth. I looked up that word corrupt in the Bible. You know what that word corrupt means? Putrid. Foul. But instead of foul things that you say, what is good for necessary edification, for building up that person, that it may impart grace to the hearer. That means, for me, not to speak to my spouse or anyone else in a way that is foul, unclean, improper, hurtful, but that which is good for that person's edification, to build them up. Why? So that I can give that person, through my communication, grace, the ability to handle life more. Next verse. Look at verse number 30. Do not grieve the Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. Then verse 31 says, let all bitterness, wrath, etc. Do you realize grieving the Spirit is right between speaking and speaking? That the way that I grieve the Spirit primarily in context is by what I do with my tongue? It's what I do with my tongue. And it gives in verse 31 6 different things I'm not to do inside of me. Watch this now. Let no corrupt communication come out of my mouth, but to build up. Don't grieve the Spirit. Okay, now, what causes corrupt communication? Watch this now. What causes corrupt communication? What causes the grieving in the Spirit? It's everything you can't see in me. See, it's not all these tips you give. It's not. It's what's here. Look at the next verse. Let all bitterness. And that's what that Greek word means. Gall. Bitter. Let all bitterness, anger, wrath, clamor. Clamor means loud noises, yelling. Evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. Malice means I have an intention to do you no good. That if you could see inside of my heart, I really want to get even. So get rid of all these things, which are sinful attitudes inside of me, which are all wrapped around anger, being upset. And instead, be kind one to another. Be tender-hearted, forgiving one another. What causes corrupt communication? What causes the spear? What causes the snake? What causes the fire out of my tongue is down deep inside. I got sin in my heart. And if I got the sin out of my heart, my mouth would be fine. Therefore, the root problem in communication isn't really learning how to speak it. It's to clean up your heart. And if you and your spouse have real conflict when you talk in your marriage, don't look at the person you're talking to. Look down. Ooh, bitterness. I am bitter about this. Then don't talk anymore till you fix it. Forgiving. What happens if you're having a fight? My wife and I had a fight. We had a fight in probably a long time. We were talking about that about the week before. Then we had a fight. So the rule is don't talk about how long we haven't had a fight. And we had this fight, and we got quiet. We both did. We talked about it a little bit, and we both didn't want to deal with it. And we tried to talk, and it didn't work. Till we both forgave each other. In our devotions by ourselves with God's help. We forgave each other. Guess what happened to our conversation when we came back together? It was peaceful. Neither one of us had trouble. And it didn't take paragraphs and chapters to get it right. It took a few words gently spoken to each other, and the best part of the fight is making up. Next verse, 1 Peter chapter 3, verse number 8. This is amazing. Finally, all of you be of one mind, having compassion for one another, love as brothers, be tender-hearted, be courteous. Now, here's the point of communication in marriage. Because if your spouse speaks evil against you, misreads your motive, lets you have it, what does everything in you want to do? Put a big but you after that? Look what you're supposed to do. Verse number 9. Not returning evil for evil, not reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, everything in you wants to do it back. That's human. On the contrary, blessing. So evil comes to you, because it will, because you live with a sinner. And evil will come to them because they live with a sinner. And at that opportunity, don't return evil, don't return foul speaking, but Oh, mercy, blessing. Oh, blessing. Soft answer turneth away wrath. Can you imagine blessing coming back? Verse number 9. But on the contrary, blessing, knowing that you were called to this. Well, I knew that. I was called to bless people. You knew that. But look at the rest of that. That you might inherit a blessing. Wait a minute. I'm going to inherit a blessing if I give to my spouse a blessing? Yes. Look at verse 10. For he who would love life. Watch this verse. For if you do give a blessing, he who would love life and see good days. You want good days? Let him refrain his tongue from evil and his lips from speaking guile. Oh my, what a promise. You want a good life? Give blessing. When? When everything in you screams not to give a blessing. Give a blessing. Why? Because then you're going to inherit a blessing. You're going to receive it yourself. From whom? From the person? Maybe, maybe not. Inherit the blessing is from God. Good life, it says. You want good life? Then give blessing. Who gives the good life? God gives the good life. Jesus has penetrating words for every one of us who would take this issue of speech and tongue a little bit too lightly. Does speaking blessing make a difference to how I live today? Yes. But what happens if I don't want to speak blessing? Because your spouse doesn't deserve a blessing, let's say. And you don't. So what? Will it make any difference later on? Matthew chapter 12, Jesus is speaking. And in verse 36 he says this. Jesus is speaking himself. But I say to you that for every idle word, that word idle means spoken casually, even a casual word. Every idle word men may speak, they will give an account of it. When? In the day of judgment. You mean when I stand before God, everything I have said, I will have to give an account for? Yes, that's called the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. This is not about eternal salvation. This is about judgment that comes later. So what's the biblical principle about the tongue? The primary speech organ, the birthplace of our words, is the human heart. Let me give you 3 secrets as we leave. Secret number one, here's the principle, but speaking the truth in love. When you want to think about how do I communicate in marriage, the answer is speak, let it come. The truth, don't lie, the truth. How? In love. Speak, I got to say it. The truth, the content of it, the method, no guile, no bitterness, no anger, no desire to hurt, in love. Here's the 6-word secret. Works almost every time. Honey, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And for those of us who need a powerful secret in this issue of communication in marriage, here's a 2-step action that never fails. If you really want to, you can stop fighting today immediately. You're saying to yourself, how? Here's the secret. The secret? Extend your tongue until the tip just barely protrudes between your upper and lower front teeth. And when tempted, clamp down.
Oh, there you are. Bob, would you please get down? Down. Come on. Hi, Lilith. Hi.
Bob, are you guys sure you don't mind taking her for the whole weekend?
We love having Alice.
No, it really stood me up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's just that you two sounded kind of hesitant.
Oh.
No, we weren't hesitant. We just had to talk things over.
We had to
Come
make
here.
sure we had things covered.
Well, it must be nice to have somebody who always agrees with you.
We disagree a lot.
Yeah, but one thing we always agree on.
What is that?
We agree to talk things over.
That's right.
Come here, honey.
Now, you don't worry about a thing, Lilith.
Oh, okay. Listen, you behave. I'll see you Sunday.
Okay, don't worry, Lilith. We're gonna have fun. Oh, that Uncle Bob's so silly.
The old eyeball. Butterfly kiss.